Do you want to run hills looking as good as Eliud Kipchoge on his way to breaking the marathon world record? I feel like the logical answer to that is yes. And why wouldn't you? Most races that you run in have got hills in them. There's really no escaping that. So being better at running hills is going to help you perform better on race day. In this video, we're going to show you exactly what to do to make running up hills much easier. We're going to show you the simple technique-y thing that most runners avoid and 3 non-running hacks that'll help you run hills better. The first of those is you need to be doing strength training to become the king or queen of the hills.
Strength training is really important for running uphills. So we know that running uphill feels harder, right? But that's because it actually is. When you run uphill, you are literally fighting against gravity. So this means that you have to work a lot harder, both aerobically and physically, to go up that hill. When you run up a hill, you're engaging muscles more extensively than you would when you're running on the flat surfaces. We know that the muscles that get activated when you run up hills are the muscles of the glutes, the quads, and also the big calf muscle. So you need to be focusing on strength exercises that are going to be working on those muscles to help you be able to power yourself up that hill.
Running hilly courses successfully is not only about being strong on the uphills, it's also being able to manage the downhills. And therefore it is important that you incorporate some rolling hills into your training week. I like runners to do that 1 to 2 times every week. So if you live in a very flat area, you need to go and seek out some hills that are perhaps just a little bit outside of your area or a little bit of a drive away from you. If you live in quite a hilly area, then you are in luck, and you just want to, as with everything else, build yourself slowly into those runs. You don't want to be doing hard hills all the time. So you need to make sure that you measure your effort, particularly on the ups, so that you don't feel like you're straining all the time. But the short answer is that the more that you can practice running on rolling hills and keeping those at the right intensity, the more you're going to improve your ability to run both up hills and for your muscles to handle the eccentric load of going down hills too.
Should you be doing hill repeat sessions? Really, these are very powerful sessions, but little caveat there is that of course we have to be doing them properly and structure them into your training well. So why hill repeat sessions? Really, they are very good to help you build your running strength. So I know you've heard me say the word strength very often, and so I'm not talking about the strength that you build while we're doing strength training or in a gym situation, but really for building your running strength, so making you a little bit stronger as a runner. Of course, if you are preparing for a race that is slightly hillier or a bit more of an undulating course on race day, these are effective in helping you build some strength for that race, but a lot of people really think that that is the only key of what to be doing. It is not. You want to complement your training with a lot of other aspects, which we'll touch on in this video as well. There are different aspects of what we would be looking for within our hill repeat sessions. I like to start with 2-minute hill repeats within a training plan. That is, again, just really focusing on building some strength, running strength within your plan. And as we move through your plan and slightly closer to race day, we might adjust that to perhaps 1-minute hill repeats, which is really a focus on power as opposed to strength. So where do we put these hill repeats in within your plan? I like to do my interval sessions generally earlier on in the week when you're feeling a little bit more fresh, and you want to build those up within your plan in the same way you do everything else. So build it on a structured sort of basis of 1 week, 2 week, 3 week builds, and then bringing it back down in the 4th week so that you have that recovery week or that deloading aspects as well. So my suggestion would be to start in week 1 with a short number of reps, let's say 4 by 2 minutes hill repeats. Week 2, you can bring that up to perhaps 5 or 6, and obviously week 3 and perhaps to 7 or 8. In week 4, in your recovery week, I would not do any hill repeats and just have that as a recovery week where you perhaps do slightly different higher intensity work. How do you actually perform these sessions? It's very important that you run your 2 minutes or your 1-minute hill repeats and every single rep consistently. You don't want to go really hard for the first one and then really slow for the last one, or vice versa. You don't want to have your first one being quite slow and you pick that pace up with each rep. you want to be able to sort of go out for your first rep, run up that hill nice and hard, not maximally hard, so it mustn't be a maximal effort, it must just feel quite tough. And then you can take an easy jog back down or a walk back down the hill back to where you started, and you repeat the reps again for the number of reps in that session. But again, the key here is to try and to get each repetition equal, a sustained kind of effort. You don't want to start too slow and work up really, really hard, or vice versa.
Like with other forms of hard running, like interval training, you need to be aerobically strong to be able to run uphill. We often forget that when you're doing hard, high-intensity training like hill running, it actually is also an exercise in volume. So until you have a sufficient aerobic base to be able to handle the volume of running you'll be doing, which will be also at intensity and not just at an easy running pace, you need to develop that aerobic engine first. This means that you need to lay down a nice sufficient base of easy mileage and long runs before you can start even thinking about attempting doing very, very hard hill repeats.
Another thing to help with your climbing is to get active in your cross training and to really get out there on a bike or go hiking or do some really brisk walking with intention, cycling hills, hiking hills, and just building that leg strength in the sort of low zone 1, zone 2 aerobic base building phase, and that will all help to climb when you start to do your hill reps later on or in your interval sessions. The great thing about cross training is it's low impact, so it protects your body from the impact of daily running, but yet you're still building strength, you're still building an aerobic base, and it's just going to make you stronger and build that endurance base that you're looking for.
Running technique and posture make a huge difference to how you go, and in particular how you look while you are climbing up hills. But while there are a few little tricks that you can do just to generally improve your running technique, these become even more effective when we are running uphill. And the first and easiest of those to master is really to make sure that you are running tall. So if you imagine that you are a puppet that's on a little bit of a string and someone is pulling you up and slightly forward. Most of us tend to lean forward when we're going into hills anyway, so that part we generally get right, but what we get wrong is that we slump. The effort of going up the hill almost turns us into like a boxer where we hunch down, hang over, and that leads you to this sort of round-shouldered, swingy kind of running style that actually makes it much more difficult for you to climb up the hills because it closes the joint angle around your hips. So the first and most important hack for going up a hill is to really picture yourself being nice and tall with your shoulders slightly open and that slight forward lean into the hill. By doing that, we now create space. Our hips are open, and that makes your drive as you push off the tar that much more effective. It also causes you to be in a slight forward lean so that you are pushing yourself up the hill instead of being all crouched up, closed hip space, and almost pulling yourself up the hill, which is far less effective and far less graceful.
As I mentioned at the beginning, there's always a caveat to these sessions. They're great, they're very powerful, but it depends on how you do them and where you do them in your sessions. And so some of the risks of doing too many hill repeat sessions or too many hill repeats in one session is that there is quite an increased risk of injury. Because we are running at a specific gradient, the angles that you are running at change, and so it puts a lot more stress on your posterior chain, so essentially the back of your body. So a lot more strain on the glutes and hamstrings, and in particular the lower limb. So the angle of your foot is obviously at a slightly different angle while you're running uphill, and so your Achilles tendon is extended, and that constant pressure of doing too many hill repeats can put you at a higher risk of injury, in particular in and around the Achilles and the lower limb. If you currently have an Achilles injury or a lower limb injury, I would recommend not to be doing any of these hill repeats until you are 100% pain-free and rehabilitated. But generally, we want to just make sure that we are doing these hill repeats in a controlled fashion so that we're minimizing as many of the risks as possible. And so the gradient that you run these hills at is really important. Sometimes people believe the steeper the better, and that is not the case. The steeper that hill is, the more gradient there is, the more that angle changes, and that's going to affect your entire biomechanics and put you at a higher risk of injury. And so the gradient that we're looking for when we're doing these hill repeats is a gradient of 3 to 5% only. It's not actually that steep when you look at that specifically. So steeper doesn't mean better, it actually means higher injury risk, and you're just wanting to have a consistently hard effort through these hill repeats, so steeper is going to take that away as well. There's something else that we've only just touched on in this video that is going to make a huge difference to your hill running and your performance. And I don't think enough emphasis is placed on this, because if you do this consistently, you could potentially smash your PBs all while remaining injury-free. So to improve your strength as a runner, rather than just running up more hills and hoping for the best, so if you watch this video next, we will share a simple 5-step method that will help transform your running.